Recording in progress.
We're good.
We're good?
YouTube as well? Yeah.
Good evening, it's Monday, April 3rd, and this is a meeting of the Southborough Planning Board. Good evening. It's Monday, April 3rd, and this is a meeting of the Southborough Planning Board. The Planning Board is now in session. First item on the agenda is an update on the Master Plan Implementation Committee. Ms. DeMaria?
Hi, everybody. Okay, just a really quick update. The Master Plan Implementation Committee met this past week. During the meeting, our chair, Lisa Braccio, resigned, and we did a reorganization of the board. I will be the new chair, and Kat McKee will be the recording secretary. And we have before us tonight the proposal from Select Board for Mr. Stivers to be the representative on the implementation committee. So that's really it. We will have for the next meeting our first compiled report from our meetings with all of our affinity groups.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Ms. Braccio. She also worked on the Master Plan Committee and put a lot of hard work in, and then volunteered to be on the Implementation Committee to see it through, and as the chair. So I thank her for all her hard work. And Sam Stivers was also on the Master Plan Committee, so I'm sure he'll do a great job jumping in. So I think that we need to appoint Sam. And do we need to accept Lisa's resignation?
No, we'll just send a letter. We don't have, I saw the email from the town clerk today, and he suggested that's not required, but he likes the fact that the board's recognized that somebody has resigned. So we'll send that along. You can make that vote.
I make a motion, we accept the resignation from Ms. Braccio.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, Luttrell, yes?
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, yes.
I make a motion that we appoint Sam Stivers to the Planning Board Public Works Committee. Master Plan Committee, sorry. Master Plan Implementation Committee.
Second.
I have a motion and
Need
a
my
second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, Luttrell, yes?
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, yes.
I was just trying to make it out to 7:05, Madam Chair.
Sam's in the Zoom room.
Does he have his hand raised?
No.
So it's now 7:05. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing, 241, 245 Turnpike Road car condos, major site plan approval. And I understand that they are requesting an extension.
No update or
Do you
anything.
want me to give a little quick update?
Sure.
Or are you good? Okay, pretty quickly. So, we had received Fuss and O'Neill review comments of submission number 2. They were provided to the applicant team, to the planning board, and they are in the process of addressing those, and they will be providing a revised submittal, hopefully prior to the next meeting. So this extension request is to continue the public hearing and to extend the action deadline the planning board has to, I believe it's
May 12th.
May 12th, to give it, so we don't have to do another one in the interim, just, we jumped ahead a little bit for,
Oh, to give us a couple.
yeah. Otherwise, we end up doing,
buffer.
yeah, because we know it's going to take a couple more meetings.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we extend the public hearing request for 241, 245 Turnpike Road, major site plan approval, and for 241, 245 Turnpike Road, a special permit, lower impact, as requested by the applicant to to reach a decision to be extended to May 12th, 2023.
Second for discussion.
Yes, Mr. Stein?
So, Mr. Mills is, and we're so grateful for his time and work on this board. Since we're going to be proceeding onward without Mr. Mills at some point in May, where does that leave us with a lid and this particular project?
Well, I recall from, this happened a couple years ago as well, and I think that the new member, I don't believe that they can jump into the public hearing. So the board will be left, or the applicant will be left with needing of 4 votes from the planning board for the special permit, but the site plan will still it's still 3. So
I just wanted to make sure the 4 of us all understood
are
that.
clear with that. Unless somebody recalls differently, I think that when Dawn retired, we were in the midst of a public hearing as well.
I couldn't remember.
And Debbie came in.
So it's all hands on deck,
Unless they can wrap it up in 2 more meetings.
which that's what also I wanted to bring that up as a possibility as well. What's your last day?
It'll be the 8th.
The 8th, so,
So there's 2 meetings.
okay, thank you. Oh, I gotta do this.
Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, Latrell, yes?
Stein, yes? Oh, sorry.
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, yes.
He's not gone yet, Jesse.
And Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion, we continue the public hearings for 241, 245 Turnpike Road, major site plan approval, and 241, 245 Turnpike Road, special permit, lower impact for the car condos. Continue the public hearing to April 24th, 2023 at 7:05
Yes.
PM.
Confirm, 7:05.
Yeah, we checked it earlier.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, Latrell, yes?
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, yes.
Very good. The next item on the agenda is a discussion, minor site plan approval for 206 Turnpike Road. Karina?
So this is similar, this is a minor site plan review, and the applicant has received Fuss and O'Neill review comments of their first submission, which today they provided a second revised submission, which was sent to Fuss and O'Neill. So they asked to be also continued to the next meeting without testimony, at which time we anticipate Fuss and O'Neill review comments of this current submission, number 2.
Very good.
And this is the, yes, because it's minor site plan, it's not a public hearing, but we still have to continue because there's a 30-day
Okay.
review period.
Madam Chair, I make a motion, we continue or grant the extension for minor site plan review for 206 Turnpike Road as requested by the applicant. And for the planning board shall reach a decision to be extended to April 28th, 2023.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, Latrell, yes?
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, yes.
The next item on the agenda is a discussion item, 6 Stockwell Lane, sidewalk trees. It's just an update. Do you want me to do that, or do you want to do that, Karina?
If you'd like to.
This is an issue that's been going on in the neighborhood of Stockwell and Fitzgerald, which is off of Highland, where trees were planted in what's commonly known as the Hell Strip now, where it's the little strip between the sidewalk and the street, this little strip of grass. And the roots from the trees are lifting the sidewalk in many places. In some places, it's pretty bad. So I met out there with Abdul, who's the acting DPW superintendent, and Chris Leroy, Sam Stivers was there, and the homeowner who had brought this to the attention of the select board. And there have been, so there's discussion on how that can be rectified. There's some like pretty big roots. The other issue there is that it's all ledge in that neighborhood, so there's really no place for the roots to go. And Abdul was saying in some of the bigger roots, they can probably like gradually like do a little hump over them. And the smaller ones, the homeowner got a quote from Bartlett Trees on how to move and cut some of those roots and then, repatch the sidewalk. And then it'll hopefully be good for another 25 years till the roots come back again.
So just to clarify, we're not talking about removing any trees. We're talking about either moving around them or pruning some roots.
Yeah, no tree removal
Great.
involved. And the neighborhood does not want any of the trees to come down.
Oh, that's great. Could have used them at town meeting. Did I say that out loud?
So I just wanted to update the board on that in case anyone said anything or heard anything, so everyone's apprised of what's going on there.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is MBTA communities. Hopefully, we'll have a joint meeting with the Select Board in Shopsy on April 10th to discuss. Since that time, there's been a lot of news reports on how the state is going to look harshly on towns that don't comply. And I think it's mostly now towns that didn't even bother doing the action plan. We'll see what happens. I don't know if a town goes through their action plan and brings something to town meeting and town meeting denies it. I don't know how it would be the responsibility of the municipality. I don't know if they're going to take attendance at town meeting and go after each attendee at town meeting. So I don't know how that will work. But, so that'll be a discussion. Also, we have a map, if you want to share that, just a preliminary thoughts on where a district could possibly go. So 10 acres is required at within a half a mile of the T station, and then the other 40 can be anywhere else. So there are a couple of vacant lots off of Crystal Pond and Cosland that do not back up to any residential neighborhoods. That I think it's like 47 acres there, that I was thinking, could be, yeah. Those aren't exactly the right lots, but that's the area there. And then that's the area by the T.
Mimi, is it the 3 lots just around the bottom of the cul-de-sac?
Yeah. I think that little, that second mountain there takes part of that split lot. That's the residential and the,
Yeah, I think it's the zone line instead of the lot line.
yeah. So we've had a difficult time. We've had a consultant that's supposed to help us with mapping. And this was the 3rd try, I think. I think your map is better, Colleen.
Thank you. They're plugging all the things into that massive spreadsheet to make sure everything complies. So that's the technical part they're helping us with.
Well, they were supposed
we'll
to
end
do
up-
mapping, too.
Yeah, we'll end up with the map, too, exactly.
I just happened to notice 21 Highland is not in the proposed district.
It is not. Do
Huh.
you want 21 Highland in there?
So interestingly, we have a SHOPSI meeting, joint meeting with capital planning tomorrow to discuss 21 Highland,
Yeah.
since my subcommittee is nearing the conclusion of our work on the possible options. And MBTA communities is a kind of a big part of the report that we did. So this is a little bit of a surprise to me.
Well, so this is just first thought, so anything can change.
What was this based on in terms of, what was the thinking? on
That
this for-
it's not residential.
Yeah, it's as
The
far-
thinking is
So
that,
is that, because I know that there's, some restrictions on what qualifies for the acreage. For example, town-owned land. So 21 Highland actually would not even count in itself toward the 10 acres because it's town-owned. Are we positive that non-residential land can be
oh, yeah.
qualify?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, it's anywhere we would like.
It can't be-
This has to be by right.
Yeah, it can't be protected as, deed restricted as open space. It can't be wetlands.
I don't know, I'm sure
But
Jesse's right.
it can be anything else. And as I said, this is just the initial thoughts. So it can be anything, but the thought here being that the housing in that area is the most affordable housing in Southborough, some of the more historic housing in Southborough. So we tried to stay away from the housing. My feeling is that I don't think that anything in that area will pass. Any, 15 units an acre zoning will pass in that area.
Your point being at town meeting.
At town
wouldn't
meeting.
stand a chance.
Right.
And I'm wondering, if the state really wants, multifamily housing, or if it just wants the ability to do dense housing near a commuter rail, which, by the way, is not public transportation. Like, everyone that lives down there, I'm pretty sure has a car to go to the grocery store and go to
Right.
their doctor's appointments. They're not taking the commuter rail. So that's a misnomer. But I'm thinking if the state really wants the, towns to do multifamily housing, that accept just that 47 acres.
So, can somebody send me that?
Yeah,
Like in a PDF so I
It's
can
in the
like show it?
If you look on
Okay, I can
the-
just download it that
it's like
way.
the second file down.
Okay.
Popped it up there just a couple days ago.
And I'm thinking the same, 21 Highland is in the middle of a neighborhood. I can't imagine that those neighbors would want 15 units per
I know what you
acre.
mean.
Jesse, you're positive that you can't use town property, right?
Well,
Are you, I
have
want
that.
to check that, because I hadn't heard that in any of the seminars that I went.
Mr.
any of the work-
Bizical mentioned it, and he's a
He might have seen it somewhere.
commercial zoning attorney.
Yeah. Okay,
I
because there.
believe him.
No,
Mr. Stivers was in those meetings. Can we call him? Sam,
We call 'em.
you there?
Colleen has to elevate
Yeah.
him. Oh, no, he's there. Here he comes. There he is.
Sam,
Yep.
we're
Yes, I
calling,
am, Jesse.
we're calling on you to answer technical questions, Sam.
What was the question again?
Can municipal property be included in the MBTA community's zoning district?
I actually don't know for sure, so I don't want to guess. Sorry,
Thanks, Sam.
sorry.
Yeah, that's the first I heard of that. That's why it stood out to me, like, oh,
Yeah, I'm a little surprised at that, but again, I can't tell you for sure.
Yeah, that we can check.
Mimi, just to clarify one more time, when we look at that red outlined industrial park area in the Dell property, that's really 3 lots right there. There's the 2 on the right, and then there, are you saying that the lot on the left, it's a bigger lot than is shown, or that's not really, it shouldn't be in there?
They're including a portion of another lot. Let me,
I'll pull up the other map,
yeah.
just the town map.
I just wanted to be clear so we know.
Can we leave that in the Dropbox for a couple days?
Yes.
Thanks.
You can even email it to you if you like.
I already did.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
Share, stop
North of the pike. You know where it is, right?
share.
Oh, you're trying to share it.
Yeah.
There we go. So there's the 3
This
lots.
corner here. So it's 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, and the one that Bowler did, looks like they have like a
This corner.
Oh,
piece of
that
this.
corner,
This
yes.
is this point up to Danfield
You're
there.
absolutely right. Okay, that's the difference. I was thinking it was the more westerly lot, but I see what you're
They
saying.
took the zoning, that's the zoning area,
Yeah. I see. They followed the purple boundary instead of,
except for around the water there.
yeah. Okay. It's clear.
Mimi, this is Sam. Can I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
I just looked it up. It said that publicly owned land may qualify as developable public land if DHCD determines at the request of the community and after consultation with the public owner that such land is the location of obsolete structures or uses or otherwise is suitable for conversion to multifamily houses and will be converted or made available for multifamily houses within a reasonable period of time. So to Jesse's point, it's not automatic, but it sounds like it can be used if you talk to DHCD about it potentially.
Thank you for clarifying that.
But Sam, you have to make a commitment that the town will move to develop that property as,
It says it will be
Multifamily.
converted or made available within a reasonable period of time. I don't know how firm that commitment is, but certainly it's their intent that it would be used for that purpose. So again, possible, but not automatic, it sounds like. This is from the DHCD guidelines I'm reading.
thank you, Sam.
Sam, where is that in the guidelines?
I'm on the Mass Government, Section 3A guidelines, determining compliance with MGL, Section 3A, Chapter 40A.
Yeah, where is it in there?
This is under the definitions section for developable
Okay.
public land,
I see that. So it's in the definitions. Got it.
right?
Thank you.
Again, Tom is certainly far more expert in this stuff than I am.
Yeah, I
but,
could have sworn that's what he said. That's why I'm.
yeah. So he's right in that it's not
Oh, so,
automatic.
Actually, Sam, if you look below that, in the, if you see, if you scroll down a little bit where it says excluded land,
Right. All
and
publicly
publicly
owned,
owned land is listed under excluded.
yeah, except for lots, Portions
You're
determined
right.
to be
There we
developed.
go.
yeah, so, anyway, as usual, not
No.
immediately straightforward.
Not really. Thanks.
And wouldn't that require some form of going through town meeting if it was municipal land, depending on, well, the zoning would anyway, but, I mean, as far as municipal land being,
Well, if you were going to sell it or
if you were
something.
gonna
Gonna sell it, yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Mills?
Yeah, just one thing, interesting, that I'd be curious how, just food for thought. You don't have to answer for me, but with the commuter rail actually goes through like Wareham Village and Buzzards Bay to Hyannis, only through certain time periods. So I'm wondering how they're gonna handle those communities too. To your point of people are gonna have cars, in the south side of town here, where the commuter rail is only seasonal to those locations and very limited, but still an MBTA community, I would think, because they have stops. So it might be something to try to leverage, with the discussions with the state.
Andrew, this is Sam. I've been attending some of these webinars that the DHCD has been putting on, and a number of communities have come up with what I believe are very realistic concerns. And the message back from DHCD has been consistently, that's tough, we don't care, deal with it. So hugely unsympathetic, but I guess people will eventually take a lot of this stuff to court, I guess. I don't know.
Well, they did, in their second set of guidelines, they did make some concessions, like we only have to do 10 acres near the train station instead of 50, which it was originally.
Right.
In some of the smaller towns, they have been easier on, because some towns had, like 700 housing units in the town, and they wanted 750 more. So some of the smaller towns they've eased up on. I don't know, I haven't looked into what's going on at the Cape, but pretty much I'm sure they have some type of requirements down there.
Crazy things, yeah.
It just seems that would be an extraordinary burden to put on a town if they only have, seasonal access to the T and everything. And it's considered a commuter rail, but, just curious. Might help.
Yeah, pretty much they don't care. Anybody else have anything on this? No? So, April 10th with the Select Board.
Just note, advisory and Shopsy are also part of that joint meeting.
6:30.
They haven't said yet, but I would imagine it's probably 6:30.
The next item on the agenda, wow, we're blazing through here. Future potential zoning updates and warrant articles. I know Ms. Demuria sent a list of some things that she was thinking of. And is that list in the Dropbox? You want to put it up? Yeah.
And Mimi, I know that you have some as well. I just really thought that since, we're past town meeting and starting off thinking about next year, I kind of have a list that I started. I simply wanted to get a read from the board if they'd be interested. So mine's kind of an exhaustive list, but I'm prepared to just kind of go through it. I didn't make slides or anything like that. But I saw that you had put something in the Dropbox as well. Do you want to talk about yours first, and then I'll go through mine?
Sure. So I had two things. One was the sign bylaw that we dropped for annual town meeting because we had to be specific to what the legal ad said. Instead of making a change at annual and then another one, might as well hit them all. So to update the sign bylaw to have the downtown district in it, that shouldn't be too much of a heavy lift. And the other, not necessarily for the fall, but just something to think about whether the board would be interested. Way back when there was the zoning advisory committee, they initially, the consultant went through all our code and made recommendations on different changes that would be helpful to be updated. And one of the things was to switch the special permit granting authority on projects that require a site plan to the planning board so that it would make a one-stop shop, streamline the permitting, so the proponents would only come to the planning board and we could do a special permit and a site plan together. And that would affect like over 55 housing. I refuse to say housing for the elderly. And also some of the uses in business highway and industrial park that are over 50,000 square feet. they require a special permit and a site plan, and they go to ZBA and then here. I think it would make sense that if they just came here, but I wanted to see what the board thought about that. Those were my two. Any opinions on those? Mr. Mills?
Oh, sounds great to me.
Sounds good.
Okay, so I'm just reading your notes. So it really just says that the ZBA would really have that single-family, two-family dwellings, those types of special permits, and ours would be really efficient, building efficiencies for processing, make it that one-stop shop, like you said, and it would really just specifically be for major site plan approvals. Yeah, makes total sense to me. I guess my question would be, is it complicated to write? And
They used to come to the planning board back before, this is Dawn's story, before they got crazy busy with all the development that was going on. And to take some of the burden off, they sent the special permits over there. So you can certainly bring it back.
okay.
It shouldn't be that hard. Most boards, planning boards do their special permits for large projects.
There's some zones, like the business village in the downtown, are already split up with a special permit from ZBA and special permit from the planning board, and those are the uses that are in the other zones that we would seek to have here. So I think we could copy, it's always easier said than done with zoning, but copy those two districts into the other districts.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. And it's something we can do ourselves versus hiring a consultant or anything.
Yeah,
Okay. Yep, thank you.
yeah, it's more of an administrative thing than, yeah, well, we'd
Because,
go through town council.
It's usually like a one-liner in all the different uses of the zoning district, and one will say, this one is, usually it's whatever, Part C, special permit required, and then it'll say special permit by planning board for those that are specifically. So it would change all those to planning board.
And-
Yeah,
And then
it
my
seems
last question,
straightforward.
that's a two-thirds vote at town meeting,
Yes,
zoning. Okay, thanks.
and I'm not suggesting for the fall.
Yeah, I know, I agree.
Mr. Maria?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it will simplify and just make it a little bit more streamlined. I support that, too.
In yours?
Mine, well, one I didn't put on my list was another go at the tree protection bylaw, and maybe thinking about simplifying it. And I wrote down in my notes, anything, good is worth fighting for. So I don't know if you want to do kind of a, thinking about that, but I did spend a little time looking at, sort of going back to some ordinances that we looked at when we were on the master plan,
Something happened.
Pittsfield and others that have like a little tighter, shorter bylaws, and I would support like taking another look at that, and thinking through maybe what were some of the opinions, and I personally had a neighbor say that he was somewhat confused, and so maybe it's just it was a little too complicated or something. I don't know. It's just not really to go into the details of it, but I would be interested to take another crack at it because I think it's worth fighting for. So on my list, and again, these aren't like, there's no time on this exactly, but these are sort of things that I've been, looking into and working through. One was environmental controls. We previously had this as a placeholder for the annual town meeting, but, I hadn't done the work and I wasn't ready for it. And so, again, this is something that addresses sound, noise, vibration, odor, and flashing lights. The particular one that I was interested in looking at was the Westborough example, which I think I brought to you earlier sometime in the year. It's a similar premise to sort of outdoor illumination in that, where you don't want noise trespass. It's very similar with sound and vibration and flashing lights, idling trucks and that sort of thing. I did do a little work, I think, Mimi, I think you joined me at one point. We spoke to the Board of Health, maybe. And they, we had a quick discussion. If everybody recalls that we have a noise bylaw that's new about, as of a year ago, but the part about industrial noise was taken out, suggestion by the Select Board to be looked at separately. So I really think that this is sort of the right time to bring that back. There's, various examples, et cetera. I happen to like Westboro for a number of reasons, because it doesn't require any kind of a noise meter. Sound engineers don't like that, obviously, but police and other people like that. So I'd like, that's one that I would like to kind of bring back and work on, and I want to see if the board has, agrees or has questions or concerns about that one.
Are you thinking fall or?
Not necessarily, no, I'm not
okay.
thinking anything, like, I don't know, just, I think it's worth working on. I mean, I think that probably, I wasn't on the board when the light trespass, and the illumination was going on, but the same concept, I would like to see in our site plan also that we consider noise, and in fact, this board has tried to entertain that as well. Some of the matters that have come before us, we've asked questions about, like, will you be making noise at night? So I do think that it would be something that we should work on, not necessarily for the fall, though.
Okay, I think it's worth looking at. Mr. Stein?
So I kind of get the feeling at the last town meeting that the will of the population seems to be shifting more toward individual by right choices and freedoms. So although I've always been a preservationist on this planning board and will continue to vote in favor of that type of regulation, I just don't know how much time right now, given the climate in town, when we have a tie for a vote for something that I feel was very straightforward, I think it's quite telling for what the mindset is in town. And we do have fairly protective regulations in place as they are now, whether, just generally speaking. It's a question of, how closely are things enforced actually right now, also comes to mind. And so I just, when something like this comes up, I think it's worth considering, our time and energy usage as far as what's the best use of this board's, energy.
Yeah, I hear you, and I have to respectfully disagree. I think that this board knows that I recused myself from a noise matter that came before you, and it took 3 years of my time and speaking to multiple boards as a private citizen, and a lot of money spent because of idling trucks and noise and vibration. And in this process, I have found out that there's a lot of people in town who either have something going on or they fear something like. In fact, we heard a matter, one of the matters before us, we've heard, neighbors, not complain, but concerns, I guess, about, will there be nighttime noise? And I don't personally think that our bylaws protect residents. We have a really unique setup, unfortunately or unfortunately, where our industrial and commercial properties abut residential neighborhoods. And so if you've got, trucks that come in and park overnight and they've got refrigerated products, or they're just, running their truck because they're heating it for the winter, or something like that. That's a group of, residents that, are negatively impacted. And unfortunately, this is like chronic standing noise. Another name for this is standing noise, because you can expect it every day and every night. So I have the energy for this one. I understand what you're saying about town meeting, but I think some of this is educational as well.
Ms. Houlihan.
So thanks, Deb, for the ideas. I know we're only talking about one, and you have 7 kind of ideas, including the trees. Specific to environmental controls, I do think it's worth maybe thinking about it in a phased approach. So do the diligence first and really understand I know you have a broad list of what those environmental controls could be. And maybe you've done diligence, you shared the Westborough, but I think also just trying to understand, I think our biggest challenge right now is that we don't have the luxury of commercial and industrial actually footing a huge tax burden, right? I think the residents do. Where Westborough, I think there's a little bit more, I don't know, I would almost say lenient. So I think the fact that they have these restrictions in their bylaws, I think is encouraging, and I think it would help to protect a town like Southborough, where the residents are not necessarily beholden to industry to foot the bill. So I would say in a diligent, phased approach to just understand because it will come up in a town meeting anyway, what other towns do this? Why do they do it? What are the types of restrictions? Yeah. And if it's something that you could maybe propose in piecemeal, it might be a 3-year process. And year 1, we would propose these elements, year 2, year 3. And then maybe you get a little bit more tighter control and restriction. To the point of Jesse's comment around town meeting, I agree. I think people are not looking for a restriction. They're I'm looking at your number 3 about commercial access onto residential roads. I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. I would leave that to the individual residents of their residential roads versus a planning board determination, considering nobody in town wants to make all the streets scenic, right? Just for protection perspectives. So I think there's some on your list that I would say, yeah, I would support from a diligence perspective. And I think environmental controls would be one of them.
Okay. Well, let me just go through the list. I mean, the decision doesn't have to be made now, but I wanted to give you an idea of what I'm thinking. Another one on the list, I don't think I have it in order, is the Department of Energy stretch goals. And Mimi came back and said, but we are phased in already. We've opted in. So there's something called the specialized code, which this is an updated stretch code that is, in addition to all new construction and alterations in municipalities that have opted in on the stretch code. And this allows towns to be, it's a newly created code that goes beyond the stretch code. So we would have to opt in if we wanted it. And it is with the long-term goal of creating a net zero economy by 2050. So it's not covered by the current DOE stretch goal. It's in addition to try to help us meet our 2050 goals. And so it's just out there. It doesn't mean we need to participate or not. I think it's interesting, and it could be something that we would like to do or not. This goal, if we opt in, would require installing wiring for electric vehicle charging in at least 20% of new parking spaces, and at least 1 space per home in 1 or 2 family homes. So it's sort of above and beyond the stretch goal that we have already agreed on, so it's an additional one. It's called the specialized opt-in code. I haven't looked at, so much at it, but I think it's worth.
Is that building code? Who brought the previous bylaw?
So Carl Geyer brought it from the recycling committee. Actually.
Oh, he did?
Yep. Yeah. back in 2000.
The stretch code?
Yeah, in 2016, I think, or somewhere around there. Yeah. So, that's one. I think that would be fairly easy. I think that we would just, his, I took a look at his bylaw, the way, proposal, the way it was written, and it's a very short, does the town want to opt in on the DOE stretch codes or something like that? But it's building codes.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what that one's all about. I did want, so they are out of order, sorry about this. I did want to, do we want to take any thoughts about that? I mean,
That I'd have to, so my initial thought is that that's not under our jurisdiction.
okay,
And my feeling is much like Jesse, I think that we need to take a break for a while. And if we go to town meeting with something, it has to be something with a lot of support or something that's easy, like updating the sign bylaw. I don't think there'll be too much pushback on that. But I would, as I said in my email to you, I'd pick like my top two that you'd really like to get done.
okay. So, yeah, I think there should be a sustainability committee, and I think they should do it, but we don't have it, and I think that the select board have said that they're looking for other boards and committees to pick up some of these things. I thought maybe because that would be something in our site plan consideration where there could, we would be, requesting that the proponents put in wiring for electric charging stations in 20% of their parking. So I thought it loosely kind of touches planning, but I understand your point. Another one is this one was yours actually, Mimi, the accessory apartment by right. So actually, as far as I know, this was first suggested at my last ZBA meeting last year. The ZBA member Doris Cahill mentioned it, and there was a discussion at the ZBA meeting. I know that others on ZBA supported what she was discussing. Mike Robbins had some feedback as a real estate attorney, said he was seeing those in other towns, had an opinion. And I know that I think I spoke with Andrew Dennington on the select board, who was interested in following up on accessory apartment by right. I've since taken a look just to try to understand something a little bit more. I suppose that we would have to have a bylaw on this, right? But
We have accessory apartments.
but not by right, right?
Right, so it would be amending what we have, I would hope, and not change the name of it to, I know accessory dwelling units, the new fancy name, but, so we don't have to change everything in the bylaw, just keep it
Okay.
as accessory apartments and update that.
Okay, and I think because of the, as part of the MBTA housing choice law, I think it's a simple majority vote now, if we were to enact this, rather than a majority's, two-thirds majority zoning. Because it has fallen, my understanding, and I don't know a lot about it, so I have to look to you guys to help out with that, but under the housing choice law, I've been reading a lot about, that towns may now pass ordinances or whatever for in-law apartments or accessory dwelling, and that it's with a simple majority vote rather than a two-thirds. But I'm not sure, but that's my understanding.
I'm sorry. And just say the last two sentences?
Just that I don't exactly understand how, but the housing choice law, section 358, allows accessory dwelling units to be passed at town meeting without going through the zoning restriction of the two-third majority vote, that it can pass with a simple majority vote. That's my understanding.
Right, that new housing choice bill.
Yeah.
So accessory apartments are on, I know it's multifamily and mixed use, is it
I'll have
also?
to confirm, but I think anything that increases housing
Yep.
was the target for that.
It's another way to support multifamily.
That's right, and it adds to our housing stack and affordable housing. So if I had to rank one, I think that one's really low-hanging fruit.
So just for, the bylaw, as it sits today, only allows for 5% of the homes to have accessory apartments.
Except for nobody has kept track of any accessory
We're
apartments.
getting there.
The building
We're
department
working on
is-
it.
And actually,
Zoning board
Lara's working on that right now with assessors and us to come up with
with Paul
a
Sabelli.
list.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, so,
We've been working on it.
But it also sort of states that, we didn't want it to be rampant in the town.
so that would be something else, whether to remove that 5%.
Yeah. Where'd that come from?
So
Is it by law, or?
it's in our zoning bylaw right now, except for we've never kept track of any accessory apartments. So it could be, 50% now, we have no idea. It's not, but we just don't keep track of it. But if they're starting to, I wonder if we'd want to either get rid of it or loosen it up.
Yeah, so it's a special permit required right now, right?
Correct, through the ZBA with the
Yeah.
report from the planning board.
And I think, I was starting to see those when I was on the ZBA, that, there are more people coming forward, due to COVID and trying to come up with living arrangements for parents and children and things like this. I think it's quite interesting. And just to cut my list short, I think, that one I think would be a really interesting one and helpful to the town.
I agree with that.
Yep.
Mr. Mills?
Sounds like you got good plans.
Doesn't even get a vote.
Keep you involved. Mr. Stein?
So I fully support the accessory dwelling by right. One thing on Shopsy that's come to light is, I don't know if anybody's been following the Housing Authority situation, how we had the term of, there's a Housing Authority person whose term expired, but we couldn't have an election for the position in town. And this is, the only reason I'm aware of it is this individual is serving as an appointee on Shopsy. So Housing Authority has been problematic ever since I've been on Shopsy in terms of having a representative. And for a while, it was just vacant until somebody stepped up, which we're grateful for. But now the term has expired. It's not really clear what we're doing going forward. So just as far as a pretty straightforward, I think, warrant article would be to have a change in the Shopsy charter, which I believe falls under planning, if I'm not mistaken. Shopsy is under select board. Okay.
Recommendations to appoint a representative like you to Shopsy. Oh, sorry. The planning board makes recommendations to appoint someone to select board, but select board actually.
Well, I mean, I can go it alone, but if the board is willing to support a warrant article to change the Shopsy charter so that rather than having a housing authority appointee, we would have of just another at-large member. We don't have to decide right this second, obviously, we've got plenty of time.
And has Shopsy discussed this?
Nope. It came to, I had, my own thoughts on it, and we are going to have upcoming Shopsy meetings. I don't anticipate much pushback from my fellow members, but this is the first I'm mentioning it publicly.
I would support Shopsy in that,
Okay,
but I
thank you.
wouldn't.
Appreciate that.
Just to weigh in on the accessory apartments by right, I also think if we're going to prioritize anything, that should be signed by law and accessory, maybe for town meeting, and then we can
Let's see how those go.
see how those go.
Excuse me, Mimi, this is Sam again. Can I make a comment?
Sure.
To clarify the accessory apartment by right thing. The housing choice legislation said that if for an accessory apartment of less than 900 square feet or half of the proposed area, whichever is lesser, you have a majority vote by town meeting to approve that kind of bylaw. For larger units, it's back up to the normal 2/3 for zoning bylaw changes.
Okay. Thank you. I think we have some type of footage limitation on the bylaw now, or 25%
yeah.
of the,
25% of the total area of the existing dwelling and whatever you're using for the accessory apartment. You total that and you can use 25% for your accessory dwelling.
Debbie, what was the Dover?
That wasn't necessarily a warrant article, but I wondered if the board, I mean, we have possibly a couple of Dover projects coming before us. And I was wondering if the board wanted to think about, and I don't know this, but just, understanding what our procedures are around it. So under Dover, there's only a couple of components of a plan that are within planning's purview. So it wasn't clear to me whether what we require from a proponent that comes forward. Do they have to give us a full site plan, or only the pieces that we're required to look at under law that are considered reasonable regulation? Just trying to kind of maybe move the ball forward a little bit and think a little bit proactively in terms of, not specific to any project, but, first so we can have, just a sort of common understanding. But, I have seen some towns that have in their rules and regulations how they will handle Dover projects and what the planning board purview is. So at least it's defined. I just don't know if anybody has had any thought about that.
Absolutely, and I think that's a good idea. And I'm wondering if we had a training session with town council, I don't think we have to do it in a public meeting. I believe we can have training outside of open meeting. So I would support that and attend.
so Karina and I did talk to town council today regarding Dover, just to make sure that we had a clear understanding. And so Dover does not give zoning exemptions, which has been a misunderstanding. What it says is that you can have reasonable zoning requirements that deal with parking and height and yard size and open space. And it's up to the proponent if something they feel would destroy their project, so to say. I forget the town council legalese from today. If you require something and they think that it causes such a hardship that they wouldn't be able to do the project. Yeah.
Well, I believe the project itself must be critical to the existence of the institution. So it can't be just any project. They can't just do anything under Dover. They can invoke the Dover Amendment if the project itself is somehow critical.
Well, but the case law takes a very broad view of what's critical. So it has to be, agricultural, educational, or religious. And pretty much anything that those organizations do would hit that bar.
I mean, I disagree. I gave when Jay Tallerman was on the line, I gave some examples of some of the private, colleges. I think it was, Boston College and,
So they were allowed reasonable regulation, but they,
right, but they looked at things,
They
for
still-
example, about how, for example, how big did their project need to be to support the
Correct.
mission and what they were trying to do?
Right.
So for an example, there was a library that was built or something, and they needed parking. And I was looking at that one, if it was Tufts or versus City of Medford or something like this, because they ended up in lawsuits, so we have all this good stuff to work from. And, it all had to do with like calculations of, well, what did they need for kids that you needed, or professors that needed to use the library. So the town required from them like calculations, that supported their dimensions, for example. So they couldn't just, to Jesse's point, they couldn't just decide, we need this big, parking garage or whatever they were trying to do. It had to, support what it is that they were trying to build, whether it was a dormitory or something else, because that's the learning process. And so that, some of these lawsuits really, especially Tufts, because there's been multiple lawsuits, really press the boundaries with how far can towns go versus what is reasonable regulation. And, it really, I think, that would be very interesting for us to kind of go into that space and understand where the towns have won. What is it that the town can, demand, let's say, to see as part of their site plan?
I agree.
Yeah.
I think it's been overused. And I think that I'm in favor of us really clarifying this, because it comes up a lot.
Yeah, I'd be in favor of it too, Jesse, some training with town council or council.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could we ask town council if he'd be willing to do that?
Absolutely. I know that in the past, Aldo provided similar training on issues that were not really clear and always came up again and again. And, even though we talked to town council, during the meeting, you're like, okay, yeah, got it, right? And then, unless you have some documentation that kind of like says, if this, then this, and then it starts to fade a little bit, and you start getting into your own thinking of what your intuition told you it was, which may not necessarily be the right thing. So, yeah, we'll reach out to Mark Purple and town council to maybe set something up like that.
I think to support that, we should prepare questions in advance, too. My only challenge, I think training's right. I think the challenge to create a process in the absence of an actual application makes it hard. Because you can't anticipate anything, really. And so while there may be things coming to us, we don't know really what the premise will be. So I think it's more of the training and maybe specific questions that we might be able to have guardrails or boundaries, but I don't know if we could necessarily be very clear without an application in front of us.
Right, because they're very unique. Each project that comes forward, whether it's a ball field or a parking lot or a change of
Solar
use.
panels.
Or solar panels, each one.
New dorm.
Marnie, just for your information too, I just looked up the MMA, which is the Massachusetts Municipal Association, does training on Dover Amendment. So there's places out there where, you can have town council and then even wider, broader training.
I think it would be, and that's really great. I think it would be especially meaningful coming from our town council, because when projects come up in front of us, we should know what our town council's view on this stuff is specifically, because if somehow things don't pan out in our normal procedures, he's the one who's going to be in court representing us. So the training also serves to get us on the same page as town council with a unified approach.
Yeah, I agree, and I participated in something when it was Aldo and I was on the ZBA, and I don't remember what the training was on, but I think Mr. Stivers was there and a few others from Select Board, and I think that we were not supposed to talk about any particular case, but basically, I think Aldo was giving us a lot of examples of case law and the thinking and the approach to whatever we were being trained on at that time, and I found it really useful.
Yeah, I agree. I think that would be a good first step. And to Marnie's point, I think we don't want to get too specific in, we'll do this and not that, because everything's different. And from my time on the board, I've never had anyone claim Dover. And we've seen a few St. Mark's projects in a Fay.
Is that right?
Yeah. They just did whatever we asked and never said we're,
There's been no churches or anything that might have more of a financial hardship?
I haven't seen any churches do anything.
They had a comforter sign. It's the only thing we've seen recently.
There was a sign that I think St. Mark's came forward.
Yeah, they didn't claim Dover on that either.
No, just saying, that was the only thing for a church.
Yeah.
But I think the only time I heard it mentioned from St. Mark's was when they were going to do those lights at the field behind Flag School there. And they eventually just pulled the project.
Well, I've been asked, I think there's a church, and I think St. Anne's is doing and planning something, and I've been asked, if a church were to come forward, how do you claim Dover? This is from a neighbor who happens to be working, so I think that there could potentially be a church that comes forward with a project also.
Well, I think it's just good, regardless, to have a good understanding.
Yeah. Good. What did we decide on a tree bylaw?
The trees, well, my opinion is I think we should let that just lay for a while. And when we pick it back up, I would want to do more outreach and have tree forums at the library and why trees are good for you so it'd be a couple-year process to prime the pump, so to speak.
And were you thinking about doing something with, is there anything we can do with our rules and regulations or anything? Does everything just stop, or is there anything that can be under policy procedures or something like that having to do with trees?
Well, there is a policy, a very brief one, that's been adopted by the Select Board. So going forward, there'll be hearings before trees will come down. And then the positive thing is that tree maintenance fund passed, so we can start working on a tree inventory.
Speaking of which, we did get Tree City USA.
Your mic.
Oh, sorry, we did get Tree City USA application approved again it's always the prior year, so 2022. And then Arbor Day is proposed, Colleen sent a proclamation to the Select Board for Friday, April 28th?
28th.
Friday, April 28th, which is the federal Arbor Day, I believe, or the state Arbor Day. So we always align it with that. And that's one of the criteria for the yearly application for Tree City. So, small step, but it means.
And there's things to go beyond. There's efforts that can be done to go beyond just Tree City, and you can be a specialized Tree City or, an overachiever Tree City. So there's lots of things you can do with trees.
When we, assuming the Select Board give us the proclamation, can we ask that they put it up on the banner on Arbor Day on the website? Last year, it wasn't actually posted on, there was the proclamation, but on Arbor Day, I went online to see, did we post it? Is it online? It
We
wasn't
can.
on the banner, but I
Yeah.
just was wondering if we can put it up on.
We used to struggle getting things on the banner, but we have different IT approach now. So
Yeah.
I think that they'll be supportive of doing that. We just have to remember to get that up there. So
Yes.
we'll do that, all right.
Yeah, hopefully we could get it on SAM, too.
So is everyone in agreement on the trees to lay low on that for a while? Sadly. So anything else on bylaws or warrant articles?
I just want to say, I thought Mimi, you and Marty both did a tremendous job, a great effort. I mean, I've never been where we've actually had a tie, but, so that was unique. But, you know, it did come a lot further than it did last time, so, you know, I just want to say you both did a great job, and I don't think it was a, you know, we're doing our part from the planning board's perspective, and, you know, I think, you know, if advocates are gonna come before us or before this board in the future and complain about certain things, be like, well, we tried. And we can try again later, but we're gonna need a good burning platform, no pun intended there. A good platform, or, you know, I think one person said it like, well, you know, kind of see how the new structure works out with the select board, being the tree warden. I think it's gonna be seeing if that's gonna work or not, whether or not you're gonna be able to get that put through, so. But taking away from, great job at town meeting, both of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. And I should mention, we did our presentations in 5 minutes.
Oh, don't get her going on that one.
Next.
Planners report?
All right. We have a few things. Don't want to miss anything here. State legislature and the governor signed a bill to extend remote meetings through March 31st, 2025. So we can continue as we have been, if the board wants to do that. Unless somebody heard anything else. Did you hear anything else? Okay, good. That's what I heard. The town will be getting a new building commissioner starting April 24th. I think he'll be a great fit. Melissa Danzer and I were involved in the interview, which went well, so.
That's awesome, and it's appropriate. I'm so glad that you were involved with those interviews, and that's the way it should be.
Thank you, it worked well. It went well. You know, they shortlisted from what they had, and then we jumped in and paid attention at that point, so we were able to vet them.
Actually, Karina, I don't know if it's officially announced, but it was the individual holding that same position in in another town, and they're coming from another town?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I'm just not sure if I can name names yet, because I don't know what's been signed or whatever, so I didn't want to. I think they were appointed during an open meeting. Yeah. So, I wanted to ask Mimi and the board if you guys wanted to start thinking about managing the meetings when they're that long, like they have been, to maybe have public hearings on major site plans once a month at one of the Monday meetings, and then maybe do more administrative things like warrant articles and rules and regulations, A&Rs, discussion items like tree issues or whatever at another meeting, so we could stagger them. Because what happens when we have major site plan and they come back 2 weeks later, it looks like they're having all these meetings, but really we have to wait for Fuss and O'Neill review, and then they have to update their plans and address those, and then the process takes longer, and it takes about a month to turn it around, so that they come back with meaningful revisions and addressing the questions that were outstanding. So-
And that's with giving you guys enough time to review everything after it's been done, you know, so it just seems really, really tight.
Right, so, you know, in the past, I talked about this before a little bit, but with the length of the meetings and some of these projects are, you know, more difficult just because of the nature of the submission. So it might just help expedite it, and then the expectation will be that the applicant realizes it's month, to the next month, and it's a realistic turnaround. I know that when I did this on the other side, a lot of towns did it that way. You didn't go to the next meeting, you went approximately 4 weeks later, because you need time.
And again, the only time we were even tight, having a town engineer whose only job was, outside of town things, to look at the projects, whereas we're just one of many with Fuss and O'Neill. We don't have a designated person to look at everything.
Right, that has to, when they get an application from us, it gets into their queue.
Right.
And they have been responding quite well and under pressure a lot of times, so it's just the number is increasing and the complications of the projects are getting a little bit more.
I think
So-
everybody's stress is out.
Yeah, so just food for thought, maybe if the planning board wants to try it, we can manage the agendas that way. And that way, it's not so harrowing to have a 4 or 5 hour meeting. And sometimes the applicants wait here too, and they're sitting here, and every hour they're here, they're charging their, and, so if we could split it up, it might be better organized. So if you're on board, we can try that. We'll start trying to implement it as best as we can.
That- Yeah, I probably won't be here when that gets implemented, but the only caution I would say is, or you might want to have to do some outreach to the EDC. We'd gotten a lot of feedback before from the EDC about how long it takes for things to get approval through the planning board and everything. While I completely understand and I agree with you, and a lot of times I've sat through these meetings and, you keep getting delayed by the applicant's request because they're not ready. I think, part of that in the past was that we showed that we could have them on the schedule, but if they weren't ready and we'd have that track record. So, up to you guys, but, just letting you know we got a lot of feedback in the past about, the length of time it takes to go through. Where, Harvard, when they came through, two meetings, boom. Well prepared, in and out.
As with
So-
their as-built approach afterwards as well.
Yeah.
Everything was addressed relatively quickly, they took care of business, it all depends on the client. But you can see that evident by tonight, the extension request.
Yeah.
So they get on the agenda and they're posted, but realistically, we're submitting these every time there's a continued hearing.
Understood.
Because the 60 days for the major site plan runs out so fast, because it's 3 to 4 weeks just to publicly advertise it before it even gets to a meeting. And that's Mass General law. You have to do that 3.5 week out to get to the paper. So I understand the EDC, because I was here when they were already talking about that, and it's the nature of the beast. It just takes time.
Yeah, that would be my pause, that we've taken so much flack about permitting time, in that would add to the perception that it takes forever. Ms. Houlihan?
So I like the concept, but I think it would actually require more active management than just planning for 1 month. Like, I would think in the initial meeting, you would have the initial meeting and then plan for whatever the 2 weeks would be. Or at the initial meeting, and then if it's gonna be 4 weeks, automatically, because Fuss O'Neill we should totally anticipate 4 weeks, then you do the 4 weeks. But I would hate to kind of automatically schedule things every 4 weeks. Because, yes, for perception, but 2, I think not everything takes 4 weeks. So what, you know what I mean? It could be a rule, but I don't know. I think there are always exceptions, and I would hate to have a process in place that wouldn't allow for those exceptions to be expeditious.
And if I may speak to that, I agree. I don't think it should be like this strict, hard rule that this is what we do. It should just be like a soft,
This is the expectation.
an
And if you're ready,
expectation.
we can get you on there.
Kind of like a, by context, on a case-by-case basis.
So I think that would come back to you guys administratively managing that. And I think if there's comfort on the active management side of things, to be able to say, okay, we're willing to not have a hard and fast rule, and we're willing to work with you, but the expectation is it's the 3 to 4 week turnaround. And I will say, when a Fuss and O'Neill letter comes in on Monday, I can't read it and be prepared for that night. And it's a waste for them and us. So I do think there's a lot of sense to it if you guys can actively manage it and feel like, let's at least pilot it and see how it goes. Maybe run it for a couple of months, and if it seems to be working, then we adopt it in a more formalized manner. But I think if the chair agrees and you guys are comfortable actively managing, I'd be supportive. I do think there are some meetings like tonight which will be super short, and then these marathon meetings that are super long, and I don't know if there's an ability to balance them, because you really never know who's going to cancel.
True. And also, we had, a lot of warrant article activity this last cycle, and you wouldn't think it takes up a lot of bandwidth, but it does. The other thing is that one of the requirements of the applications is that they have to submit anything. They're required to submit 7 days before, and if they don't, the planning board has the option to continue. In the past, the planning board has said, well, all right, we'll accept this and we get you the information, and they may speak to a little bit, but you don't have to let them do that. But it helps the process, but that 7-day time frame is supposed to allow you enough time and the public to review what's out there. Because often we'll get it on a Tuesday, and we're trying to be lenient to help them move forward, but then that shortcuts you, it shortcuts the public. So it's kind of a balancing act, but maybe just with the understanding, our goal is to try and manage it so, it seems to be working right now because we use this extension, and the current applications we have in front of us are amenable. This is, these are their ideas. That, we're not ready yet. Can we continue? But there are some who just want to keep coming, and they're not really ready yet. And so, but I think we can probably figure it out.
Is there a 3 to 4 week turnaround for Fuss and O'Neill?
No, mostly it's within 2 weeks. But what's happened is when we had a rush on things, so it's not just these applications, but they do as-built reviews, and they do like bond reductions coming up, and this is a variety, and each thing takes a little bit different time. And they also had some staff reductions, they had some staff loss over the past year, so they finally hired more people, so it always helps once those people are up to speed. So it's just the typical dynamics of business. There's ups and downs. Sometimes we resonate and get a good little, easygoing path, and then sometimes we get like 3 or 4 difficult, challenging applications. So it just seemed a way to maybe mitigate some of the time, because I can tell you right now, it's very difficult if they submit an application, we file it with the town clerk, and the 60 days starts for major site plan, and we're already using 30 days just to advertise, right? If you think about it, 3 weeks, they have to give it to me, we have 3 to 4 days to look at it. They have to make any supplemental or additional to have a complete application. Once it's in, that could even be a week or 2, and if we have problematics, I don't want to accept applications that later can be constructively approved because people refuse to submit during the public hearing. Once you start the public hearing, it tends to take a life, So just food for thought. If you have any other ideas, but, to help us all manage it so that, we keep people on the boards and keep things chugging along, but it not so impactful like a midnight run. And it's good for the applicants too, because it's very expensive. It's at least $500 to come to a meeting, never mind sit here 3 hours when we used to do it. So. Anything you have to add?
No, just the way that it works out, especially when they go, sorry.
That's right.
What I was saying was just the way it works out, especially after they go through their first deposit for Fuss and O'Neill, which is required, and then we have to get an estimate. And then we have to get the estimate and write up the TA the task authorization before it can even be looked at or sent to them. And these little things just add time.
Which we've already shortcutted by having an upfront menu of fees for certain applications. That's helped a lot. Because you used to have to FedEx the plans, and then you'd wait for them to give you a review. And then, so really now it's already been quite expedited on the front end. But each project has a different amount of review required, so we just, one step at a time.
Although it is most projects want to go. So,
Okay,
Karina, I just want to say thank you for being flexible, because you guys are in the trenches, and I don't understand all of the details. In some ways, I really appreciate that you're working with them, the proponents, but I also don't want to make sure that you don't get kind of, finger pointed at you and beaten up, but just for trying to be amenable and flexible. I really appreciate also that, we hold tight on the 7 days, because I know it's just easy for them to say, I'll get that to you Tuesday, I'll get that to you Wednesday. But what it does mean is that this board is potentially not prepared, and that's not fair to everybody, And then it means we asking more questions because we didn't understand, or maybe they were rushing, or something like that. So I think I think the ZBA sets like a timetable that they put out on their website. Says you need to submit here to be heard here.
and we
I
have
really
one of
like
those
that.
that just hasn't been updated
Yeah.
as of late. We used to post it on the website. It was like for several months out, gave the deadlines, and it trains people.
Yeah, but you're in the midst of the whole thing. If you guys can manage that, I really appreciate that.
I'm gonna get a helmet
Yeah.
with a point on it. Just kidding. Okay, all right, so we talked about that. You all saw the truck exclusion explanation? Okay. If anyone has questions on that, they can reach out to us, and I have the email from the state traffic engineer. Tree City USA, we already talked about. The outdoor illumination and downtown district design guidelines are posted on the website now underneath applications and fees. So if anybody needs to point someone to a reference, they can look at it there.
we've also figured out how to get things up quickly on the website. So anything you want up, let us know.
Yep, Colleen is the resident expert now, so. Okay, quickly, I did receive an official memo from Mark Purple about the ARPA funds. That's in the record, so as we have some bandwidth, we'll start acting on some of those. Chestnut Meadow subdivision, if you recall, is coming in for a covenant extension at the next meeting, and hopefully a bond reduction. They've done quite a bit of work there. So that's in review with Fuss and O'Neill. They'll be doing a site inspection and seeing how much work has been completed to reduce that bond. They have been building steadily. I think there's a couple of houses left, so they need a little bit of an extension. Chestnut Hill Farm as-built, the barn, those came in. There were some minor differences. I don't think significant. They didn't stripe some of the parking. Some of the parking that was near the entrance was going to be into the lawn a little bit. They left them out on the paving. Relatively insignificant changes. So I would like to just sign off on those and move on. There was nothing major there. If anybody wants to see those, we can get them to you, but they did a good job there as well. 1 Pine Hill Road, Harvard University Storage Collections Building. They finalized their as-bills as well. They're all set. They had a tiny little bit of erosion on one of the bankings, and Melissa was taking care of that when they reseed it in the next few months or so. That one came out great. There was a couple of catch basins that were too light on the plan, so you couldn't see it, so they reissued the sets for us, so we had a nice set to go. The zoning map, it's currently at the consultant for revisions. Once that comes back, we'll post that up again and take the next step. It should include the current 2006 and then also the downtown district for now, and then the next phase will be to add any other overlays that we find. Bless you.
Bless you.
Remote meeting already, that's it for planners report. And we have one set of minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes from February 27th, 2023 is written.
Second?
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, Latrell, yes?
Mills, yes?
Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes?
Demiria, yes?
Bridget did a nice job.
Yes, and Colleen is spearheading these. She's reviewing them and working with Bridget to make them up to speed and working now, so,
Yeah, the minutes are great.
yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. I think that's it. Is everything signed?
I think we actually did get everything signed.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, Latrell, yes?
Mills, yes?
Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes?
Demiria, yes?
Yes.
Thank you.